This is TG with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And how easy is it to get into a pre-built system in gaming where all you have to do is just throw in a GPU? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce you to these three workstations. These are professional workstations that came out in 2011 and 2013, but they take over 50 different CPUs. And you can usually pick these up for $150, but I'm going to go over the specs on these. Now these take the X79 motherboards, the X79 or the X79 Intel XEONS, and they come in two different types, the 2600 V1 and V2, the 1600 V1 and V2. And that's why there's so many CPUs available. That's why there's 50 CPUs available in here. And the gaming performance of those CPUs can give you the same gaming performance as an i7 8700K or higher, especially in 2K and 4K mode. But let's talk about the differences here between these systems. This first system here is the HP Z420. And this is the Lenovo S30. This is the Dell 3610. So I like the HP Z420 because it has 3 bays in the front here. And I do a lot of DVD and Blu-ray ripping. This is my test system, but my personal system, I have a Blu-ray and a DVD player in here. And I like the looks of this one a little bit better than the others. But as far as compatibility goes, they all take the same CPUs. They all take the same RAM. They take up to 64 gigs of ECC RAM. This one has a 600 watt power supply, 600 watt power supply on the Lenovo, 685 watt power supply on the Dell. Now, when you buy these systems on eBay, there's a few things that you have to look out for. They did come configured with 400 watt power supply, so you have to make sure in the description that it shows that it's a 600 watt power supply. Also, too, the Lenovo and the Lenovo and the HP, they came out with version 2 in 2013. But they didn't change the model numbers. So when you go on eBay to buy these, you got to type in HP Z420 V2 to make sure you're getting a computer that's compatible with a V2 CPU. And if you type in V2, it'll probably come with a V2 CPU in it. But if you don't type in V2, then you don't know. It's possible you could get one that's compatible with the CPU, V2 CPUs. But it's just better to put in V2, then you know for sure you're getting a motherboard that works with the V1s and the V2s. And the reason why is the V2s give you a lot more flexibility, and there's more power on the V2 side than there is on the V1 side. There are some good chips on the V1 side, but you'll be limited on your CPU options with these systems. So these systems are just an awesome value. You know, a lot of people get people into the Optiplexes, and you can pick up the Optiplexes sometimes around $60 with some maybe $20 shipping and handling. So you might be able to pick one up with $80. Might come with 4 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM. But the problem is, to me, those are one-trick ponies. And don't get me wrong, we've been using those Dell Optiplexes for years in our office, and I just now upgraded them to the Z420. My wife uses the Z420 for video editing. My kids use them for gaming. So there's nothing wrong with the Dell Optiplexes. It's just that you're limiting yourself to any type of upgrade that you want to make as far as the CPU goes. If you wanted a more powerful GPU, plus 2, the Dell Optiplexes usually come with maybe like a 200, 350 watt power supply, where these ones come with 600 watt and 685 watt. So you can pretty much run most of your modern day cards in these systems. And I'm going to be going over the GPUs that I would recommend in these systems. And I have, because there's over 50 CPUs to choose from on this platform, I have my top 6 CPUs that I would run for gaming in here according to performance and price, starting at $20 to $140. So let's just go ahead and oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. Another reason why I like the HP is because any of these you could use for a server, but the problem is hard drives. How many hard drives you can get on. The thing I like about these 3 bays here, and I've got a video coming up on how to turn this workstation into a server, put in this 4 bay, or you can put a 5 bay in here. There's hard drive space in the in the workstation itself. For more hard drives, this makes a great server. You pick this up for 150 bucks and throw this in. These are like 40 bucks, or you don't even have to throw this in. This is just going in for convenience. And you get like a $27 CPU, throw it in here. You've actually got a really powerful server that can run Plex, VMs, and so forth. Anyway, so let's move on. Let's go ahead and open up these cases. Just take a quick tour of them. I'm not showing how to change CPUs or memory in these systems. Oh, by the way, these systems usually will come with 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, sometimes 4, but most of the time they come with 8 or 16, sometimes 32. Sometimes they come with an SSD. If they come with an SSD, usually it's 120 gigs, sometimes 250 gig. If it does come with an SSD, sometimes it'll come with a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte hard drive. So you could boot off of that, but I personally would upgrade to either a 500 gig SSD for the games or a 1 terabyte. You could use the SSD that comes with it as a bootable one and get an NVMe card and throw in an NVMe SSD in here for speed of loading your games. You can't boot from an NVMe, but you can install games to it. And I'll get into that a little later. So let's go ahead and open up these cases, take a quick tour, and then I'm going to talk about my 6 favorite CPUs and the GPUs I would recommend running with these. Like I said, they're going to take most of your modern GPUs anyway, but there are some things that you do need to know. So let's open up the cases. Okay, so let's take a look inside here. One thing I need to say about these systems, you know, if you're a parent and you're trying to get your kids into gaming at a practical price, that's another reason why these systems are great, because they can pretty much play any game you want. You can throw in most card. They're just great. They got a lot of room. This is where the hard drives go in here. And I'm not going to go over again how to install them. I do have a video again on how to install the memory, the CPU, the SSD, and the GPUs, and the different configurations that you need for the GPUs. Because depending on what GPU in here you get put in here will depend on what cores you need and so on and so forth. Now, in this system, some of these systems come with a front fan here. This one didn't, so I threw in a fan here, and I also show how to put the fan in that video. That link is down below. It's how to upgrade a PC as far as RAM, CPU, GPU go. But right now I have this as a 2060 in here, but you can see there's a lot of room in here. I can put in almost any long card in here. Just have to push these cables out of the way. I don't have real good cable management right there. Here's the CPU here. This fan's great. What I usually do is I'll usually go into the motherboard, and I show this on my how to upgrade the system. I usually turn this fan up to 2 notches just to help keep it cool as well. But like I said, you can fit almost any size GPU in here, and there's enough length here where you can, if it takes up 3, because my 2080 Ti takes up actually 3 slots instead of 2. Now, what I do want to talk about is why we have this one open is, and I'll just take it out real quick. We got this right here is what I run in this system. And so on here, if I can get this the right way, these cords here. So this particular one, this is what I do with my system. You can go, this right here is a M.2 card. You can boot off of it. And so this right here, cable goes to the motherboard. But this is my NVMe card where I store all of my programs. So you could get a card like this if you wanted to also, or you could just install an SSD right into the cage there. And again, it has 3 slots here for hard drives. That's why I like using this one for a server. Okay, now that I have this card back in, let's talk again here. There's 4 banks of memory here. Underneath this fan, there's 4 banks of memory. Again, 64 gigs of RAM. Here's your 600 watt power supply. Basic setup, but it has everything you need for your GPU, everything you need. Oh, and really quick, what I do need to mention, you don't always need this fan here. I put this fan here because I put a lot of different GPUs in here. And some of them are hotter than others, and that's why that's there. It just helps push the air out. A lot of times I'll take a few of these vents off up here. It does have vents in the top here just to help get the air out of the case. Okay, it's real easy to get the case back on. This just slides on, you push it down, and we're done. So let's look at the Lenovo now. Most of these cases, a lot of them are toolless, so just press that button, and here we go on this. So Lenovo, again, sometimes there's a fan here, and if not, I'll put one here. Again, you don't have to, it depends on the card you have. One thing about Lenovo, you'll notice the fan for the CPU is a little smaller, and I wish it was a little bigger, but like I said, I usually will turn the fan speed up just to help cool it. But one thing you do have to do on this, because of this handle here, you either have to cut this all the way out or cut it right here, because the cards hit this here. It's pretty much the same setup. You can put 3 hard drives in here, and they come with adapters here. I've taken the adapters out. And so you can put 2 CD-ROMs in here. Here's your power supply. And they all come with 80 bronze plus power supplies, by the way. What I didn't mention is the Z420 takes 8 SATA drives. This one takes 6. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put this on. The real basic, I'm just showing you basically the room. You got plenty of room. Again, it takes the same amount of memory as the other one. You've got 4 memory slots on each side of the CPU, 64 gigs of RAM. Okay, now as we look into this Dell, one thing I do need to mention, this is not a 3610. I don't have a 3610, but it's basically the same case that they use. This is actually a version 3 of the X99, but it's practically the same case, configured the same. And so again, you just pull this handle up. Now the difference with this one here, so the Dell, your card will go right here, your power supply will be here, the CPU will be on this side, and usually Dell has a fan here. These actually have fans right here. You can't see them, but they have fans here. They're built really nice, really rugged. This particular CPU, or excuse me, not the CPU, this particular system, what you'll notice different about this one is this is a dual processor. And again, this is an X99 Dell, but the case is the same. Actually, the 3610 is configured a little differently. The hard drives go in the front, but you still have this mesh in the front that you might have saw. And it actually has 4 hard drive slots than this one here. But as far as the inside goes, it's configured the same. And this one here is going to be my new Proxmox server. I'm attaching a disk shelf to it. When I say a disk shelf, that's part of my server series that I'm going to be going over. But again, the 3610 basically looks exactly configured the same. It's just a little wider because the hard drives go in the front, and it takes 4 hard drives instead of 2.
Okay, again, here's the HP Z420 professional workstation. I didn't really go over a lot of the specifications. Most of them come with 6 PCI 3 slots with 2 GPU slots. Most of them come with 3.0 USBs in the front, 2.0s in the front. FireWire is also available, and 2 or more 3POs in the back, and 4 or more 2.0 USBs in the back as well, along with your sound cards options, along with your sound card mic plugs. So here's just the Dell 3610. Again, the 3600 is the V1. You'd want to type in 3610. The Lenovo S30. The Lenovo S30 V2 has USB 3s in the front. The version 1 doesn't, but you really want to concentrate on and get the version 2s if you're going to get any of these, just for flexibility. And then a second option is the HP Z620. I actually have this one as my productivity computer. This is one where I compress a lot of videos, and this one has the ability to add in another card that makes it a dual processor. And that's why I bought this one, because I wanted to do a dual processing in this system eventually. But the advantage of this system too is it does come with an 800 watt power supply, and therefore you wouldn't have any problem running any CPU in those. The ones that have 600 watt power supplies, you run into power issues if you're going to start running a 3080 Ti in them. So this is another option here. I love this machine. Again, the only difference between this one and the Z420 is the power supply and the option to have a second CPU. So pre-built versus building, the Chinese option. These are some of the options here. This is one of the combo packs, $153 for this Hunan, and it comes with 16 gigs of RAM, the E5 2689, and this is one of my top 6 CPUs that I have in my list. But this is one of your options. This comes in different price points depending on the motherboard that it's going to come with, and sometimes these ones that are cheaper, the RAM is 1333 megahertz instead of 1600 megahertz. And so there are advantages and disadvantages of the Chinese boards, and I'm not going to get into those right now. But one of the advantage of them though is that you can boot off of an M.2 EME drive, where with the HP you can't. You can run your programs off of it, but you can't boot. So let's just go over the pricing here real quick. The HP Z420, a lot of times you can just start gaming it at $150, but if it doesn't have the right CPU in it, and I'm going to talk about the CPU in a minute here, you can throw in this 2689 V1 and be up in gaming. Later on you can upgrade the CPU and I'll go over again, this is one of my top 6 CPUs to choose from. Sometimes you may, if you don't want to use what they have in the system. Now, if you want to add an SSD card, then a 500 gig would cost you $50. And if you want to do a terabyte, that would just add to the price. But again, a lot of these come with a 120 gig SSD or a 250 that you can boot from and run Windows from, and then you could use the hard drive until you upgrade to an SSD. So you could be in at 224. Now, depending on what card you run, if you're getting a card where it's just a 6-pin, you don't have to worry about a graphics cable, because these all have 6 pins in them. And then I talked about an optional fan that you can install. Sometimes they come with Windows 10, sometimes they don't, so that's why I have Windows 10 down here. So you could be all the way up to 265, but realistically, you could be gaming in this 224 price here. Now, if you're to build a system from the ground up, buy each part separately, and this is a Chinese motherboard I'm talking about, you're looking at $365 with a Chinese combo. You're looking at more around $313. But again, you have to build the system, and where at the HP you don't. So these are the 15 CPUs I tested in my other video, which I recommend taking a look at. I'm not going to go over these, but this is what I pulled my top 6 out of. And so my top 6 CPUs, again, are right here. I'm just going to go over these really quick. My number 1 is the 1680 V2, $135, and it ranges between $135 and $150. A lot of times on eBay they'll say make option, they accept make offer, they accept my offer at $135, so I got to start $135. It's 8 cores, 16 threads, 3.3 clock speed, 3.9 turbo. The turbo is I think around 3.2 on all 16 cores, 25 megs of L3 cache, and this is one of the reasons why I think these CPUs do so well. Even on the i9, the i9 today only has 20 megs of L3 cache, and then 130 watts. The 2667 V2, $115, 8 cores, 16 threads, and the 3.3 base clock speed, 4.0 single, and I think it does all 16 cores around 3.2. 3.3, 25 megs of L3 cache, 130 watts, 2690 V2 is a $90 CPU, 20 cores, 20 multi-core, or 10 cores, 20 multi-cores, 3.3 clock speed, 2.6 turbo, 25 megs L3 cache, 130 watts. The 2667 V2, $65, 10 core, 20 20 multi-cores, 2.3 base, 3.3 turbo. Now it turbos around 2.9, and so I was not expecting it to do very well. I'll talk about this when I met, but this is a great CPU for the price. 25 megs L3 cache, 116 watts, 115 watts, 2689 V1. This here is my best performing budget CPU for $27. You cannot go wrong putting this in the system for a budget system. At 8 cores, 16 threads, 2.6 base speed, 3.6 single turbo, and I think it all turbo is around 3.1, somewhere between 3 and 3.2. 20 megs L3 cache, 115 watts. Then you have this 2670 V1, $20. And this one does great, but I'd only recommend this if you're really on a budget and you can't afford this $27 one. But I'm throwing it in here because it is only $20 and it does perform really well. So you're talking 8 cores, 16 multi-cores, 2.6, 3.3 turbo, the 20 L3, 20 megs of cache, 115 watts. Now I threw these ones in here because they are our options. This one's $35, but this $27 2689 outperforms this 2650 V2 for $35. This particular CPU is 12 cores, 24 threads. If you're doing a lot of productivity work and just game on the side, this is a great option here. But my top 3 picks are the 1680 V2, the 2667 V2, and the 2690 V2. Now this 2670 was an anomaly. I did not expect the performance that it performed. It was a shocker to me when I was testing this one. And so $65, you could get this CPU and run the CPU for a long time, then maybe later upgrade to the 1680 V2 or just keep running this one. Again, this 2689 is a great option. And I'm only talking about these if the system doesn't come with a CPU that's gameable, or you're going to game in 2K and 4K. You're definitely going to want to get into one of these CPUs here. Now, just really quick on this 2667 and the 2690, I personally would just choose the 2690. The 2690 and the 2667, they kind of trade blows when it comes to gaming. Sometimes one will do better than the other. And this 2690 for productivity work with 10 cores, 20 multi-cores is an awesome CPU. This is one that I set my wife up for video editing. I video edited with this one for a while as well. And so this is a great CPU. So then these ones that are grayed out down here, the reason why these are grayed out is because the 1620 is very popular, and it does come a lot of times. That's what comes with these systems. Anything less than the 1620, I would upgrade to one of these CPUs up here. But you can game on this one, but if you're going to have a card, anything greater than a GTX 1650 on a RX 580, then I would pop up into one of these CPUs up here. And the 2667 sometimes comes with it as well. The V1, obviously the V2, no one's going to sell the 2667 V2 with one of those systems for $150. So that's these CPUs in a nutshell. Now, when it comes to 4K gaming, the 4K gaming with these CPUs is the same, or actually better than some of the newest CPUs out as of March 2021. And I'll show you a couple of things here, a few charts. Now, this particular one, I did a series on 2K gaming, 1440p gaming. This is Watchdog Legions being tested in 1080p in medium, high, very high, and ultra high modes. Now this game is very hard to play. It's very GPU and CPU intense. But look at how this is that 2650 V2 is a $35 CPU. I didn't have the 2689 at the time, or I would have thrown that in here and done this test and recommended the 2689. And this system here was a $530 system to get into 2K gaming. But look at the performance here. We've got the AMD R5 2600, the AMD R7 3600X, $330 chip, $200 CPU against this $35 CPU. Now I did throw in the 2667 CPU, it's $115 just to show the performance difference. And of course the light red is the 2600, the red is the 3700X, the light blue is the $35 CPU, and then the dark blue is my 2667, the $115 CPU. Now look at the performance here, that these CPUs are keeping up with these AMD CPUs. Again, and we're getting greater performance as we go along. We're either keeping up or better performance than those more expensive CPUs in this 1080p option in medium, high, very high, and ultra high. Let's look at 2K mode now, 1440p. Again, the CPUs are keeping up or doing better. And as far as the 1% lows, I didn't put those on here, but they're matching or better than the AMD CPUs. Now let's just look at Watchdog Legions. This guy tested, and sometimes I'll go out and compare with other people, and I make sure I'm comparing apples to apples, setting my card the same as their card. This guy was running Watchdog Legions 1440p ultra modes with an i9, with a 2080 Ti i9 10900K, $460 CPU, and I just did this against my 2667 V2, $115, but my other CPUs are not far behind this. I did include the 1% lows on this, so the lighter numbers are the 1% lows. The red is the i9 10900K, the dark blue is the 2667, and the default mode in this 1080p Ultra keeps up. Then he did ray tracing Ultra, then ray tracing DLSS quality, ray tracing DLSS balanced, ray tracing DLS performance. And look at this. This $150 2013 CPU keeps up with this i9 10900K. So now let's look at Rainbow Six Siege. And now this is a R9 3950X $730 CPU. And now I'm going to admit, you cannot get 1080p performance out of these CPUs that you can get with the highest and best CPUs in March of 2021. Now I'm talking about the best CPUs. If you're talking a mid-grade brand new CPU, then of course these are going to keep up. But I'm talking comparing this against the R9 3950 for $730, and I've compared my 2667 V2 $115, 2690 V2 $90, 2670 V2 $65, and the 2689 V1 $27. And look at how it performs in 1080p. Of course, again, you're not going to get the same performance. Now it depends on the card that you're also running. You know, if you're running a 1660, then you're going to get the same performance. You're going to get good. You're not going to see that much difference in performance. But because we're running the 2080 Ti, I wanted to push these CPUs to see the bottleneck of the CPUs. So really realistically, again, I think I mentioned this before, but realistically in 1080p you get the same performance as an i7 8700K, or a little faster or a little less. And so that's what I'm showing here with the Rainbow Six Siege. Now, but in 2K and 4K, look what happens. We now start to outperform the $730 CPU, or we keep up with it. The same in 4K. Now, I will admit, in this 4K video, I was doing 12x, he was doing Vulkan, 100% scaling, and so it does change these figures. Go watch my video on testing the 16 CPUs, but even in Vulkan, we still we're keeping up with this R9 or 3950X, or doing better in 4K mode. Now look at F1 2020. Again, we're comparing against this brand new high-end CPU for 2020, and look at our results here. We're not that far behind this CPU. Now look at the 2K results. We're either keeping up, or we're better or better or a little less. Now look at the 2K results. We're actually a little better than this brand new CPU. Don't ask me why these CPUs perform so good in 2K and 4K modes. It could be the L3 cache they have on them. It could be the number of cores, because all these ones that we're testing here are either 8-core 20 multi-threads or 10-core 8-core 16 multi-threads or 10-core 20 multi-threads. So now let's just go on and talk about the graphics card. Obviously, you can run all these cards. Anything less than the 1650 Super and the RX 580, of course, you can run with these CPUs. But these are the ones that I recommend that you start with, obviously, because you're going to get less performance with those other cards. And then any of the 1660, 1070, 1080, 2060, 2070, along with their counterparts, the Supers and TIs, the RX 580, the RX 5500, the RX 5600, the RX 5700. Let's talk about the newer CPUs. Obviously, you can run the RX 2020 or the RX 2080, the RX 36, RTX 3060, the RX 6800. Now, the reason why I have the RTX 3070 and the RTX 2080 Ti in blue here, two reasons. To run these, you may have to swap out you'll have to swap out the power supply. Now, in my video where I talk about upgrading the system, I show what power supply I upgrade to in this to run my 2080 Ti. Not that you can't run a 2080 Ti, and this is with the HP Z420. But the HP Z420 only comes with one 6-pin, even though it's a 600 watt power supply. And so, but they do have a 600 watt power supply for the HP Z420 that has two 6-pins on it. But the other reason why I have this out in blue too, remember, I'm not doing these systems for someone that's a professional gamer. A professional gamer is not going to get the highest and best with the latest CPUs 1080p performance. So obviously, if you're a competitor, if you're competing in these high-end CPUs and high-end GPUs, this is not the system for you. But if you're a gamer and you just want high results in 1080p, and again, you saw the performance in 2K and 4K, then by all means, run these cards. I haven't tested the RTX 3080 or the RTX 3090, the RX 6800 XT, the RX 6900 XT, but it would be really interesting to see how these would perform in 2K, 4K mode. Because most people buying these cards, unless you're a professional gamer and trying to get 1,000 frames per second in 1080p, and I kind of joke there, you're going to be running these mostly in 2K and 4K mode. And so I just haven't been able to get any of these cards to test with. So again, the overview here, great system, great budget system, but not just a budget system. You can do high-end gaming with this as well. It's just an all-around great system, and now you know why this system, I call it one of the most flexible, best budget systems that you can buy today. And it doesn't mean that there's better, because there is the X99 platform, but you pay a little bit more money for that platform, and I do have some videos coming out on the X99 platform coming up. Be sure to click the subscribe and bell icon so you can get those videos as soon as I make them. This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. I hope this opens your eyes up to these workstations, XEONS, and performance of XEONS in gaming, especially the 2K and 4K gaming. Have a great day and happy gaming.
Now that was easy peasy.